Okay, welcome to Android Authority on Air, the first Google Plus Hangout show about Android stuff. I am Scott Anderson, and this is Dan Carlton, Darcy. How do you say your last name again?
It's Lacouvet.
Lacouvet. I always butcher that.
That's
and
all right.
Jonathan Franklin. How you guys doing today?
Good. Nice to be here.
It's good stuff. Good day.
Okay, so Dan, what we got on the docket for tonight?
So we got some app updates tonight. We also have a contest for a Nexus 4, an international giveaway. Darcy's going to talk a bit more about that later and how to win. We've got some big news in patent wars, as well as some new carrier news, as well as some device news and device updates, as well as a little bit of Rootin' and Ramen news.
Cool, cool. Well, to start out with app updates, we got Titanium Backup. That got updated. Basically, the big feature and a feature that people have been waiting for is you can create a flashable zip of selected apps and their data. This is really nice, so you don't have to make an Android and have to flash it all over and have to get the data and everything. I mean, it'll save a lot of time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is something that it should have had ages ago.
Long time ago.
It's
trump card of software features for a backup application.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's difficult, and it's kudos to them for being able to implement it. But it's certainly something that I think people have wanted for a very long time, and it's especially for people that flash ROMs all the time. It's a huge time saver.
Yeah, also they added the functionality of having the ability to upload to Dropbox files that are bigger than 150 megabytes. So that's nice as well too. Get your app updates and all of your backups in the cloud and not being limited by how big the file size is really nice. Next app update is Google Shopper. Basically, it has a brand new UI. It kind of reminds me of Google Plus on a tablet with their tile features. It's a nice UI. It's mostly picture-oriented, so if you think Google Plus Pictures, and also you have some ratings from Google Guide. It's basically a more streamlined app and interesting, and you also get some notifications that are built in too. And then app rumor, Microsoft Office for Android and iOS is rumored for May 2013 release. I like the fact that they're coming to Android. What do you guys think about this? Do you think this is going to be an app that's going to be used widely, or is it something that too little, too late?
I think it's definitely going to be used widely. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are very locked into Microsoft, especially Microsoft Office, in a way where, I mean, sure, there are bunches of apps that you can use to work with Office documents on Android and iOS right now, but there's a lot of people that just are very locked into I need Microsoft in order to work with this, right? It's the leftover relic of the 90s where you had to have Microsoft Office to work with a Microsoft Office document, whereas, you know, nowadays you can work with it with LibreOffice or, you know, iWork or Google Docs or Zoho or any number of others, but people still think I need Office. It needs to come from Microsoft for it to work. And especially in enterprise, I think that this is going to help Android in particular get its foot more into the door of mobile enterprise in a way that, you know, IT and enterprise is going to be more willing to accept when it's backed with the same Microsoft, you know, security and software assurance and integration with all the other services.
And they're trying to legacy support there is really substantial.
Yeah, and they're tying it very heavily into their Office 365 and their SkyDrive platform, which makes sense because the standalone Office 2013 for desktop is tied very heavily into SkyDrive as well. So, you know, trying to unify that across everything. And this is Microsoft's new big thing, is pushing for unified everything across mobile and desktop and make it all the same. So it's a bit limited though because it doesn't have editing ability unless you also have a 365 subscription. So with the new sort of subscription model for Office 2013, I'm sure that'll become less of a problem. For a lot of people though that don't have 365 or are kind of turned off by the, you know, subscribing to desktop client software. I think that they're going to, you know, go past this and be a little turned off by the fact that they can't actually do anything.
Yeah, I think Google really has a big opportunity here to actually, you know, keep innovating in Google Docs and all of their online suites of tools that people use every day and offer it for free. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Google responds to this. And there's been so many competitors that have come into this market segment, but
yeah, and
they had a little bit of foresight buying Quick Office as far as I think they realize how important mobile Office features are going to be in the future. So
yeah, Microsoft is obviously the player in Office suites. I mean, there are other players, but when it comes to, especially to business, Microsoft Office is it. It is the beginning and the end. So
it's brand recognition, even if it does the exact same thing as another client.
Right. Even if there are competitors, people always go to Office first. So I think it'll definitely get a lot of use. How good it's going to be, I think, remains to be seen.
Okay, so let's move on to some Google Wallet goodiness. The Google Wallet physical card that is confirmed to work on the support page. It was confirmed that non-NFC app compatibility will work with 2.3 Gingerbread Plus, which is exciting, and I like the legacy support here.
Yeah, it's also a way for them to get Google Wallet into sort of consumer use without having to deal with all the carrier NFC blocking it bull crap, right?
Yeah.
So even if Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T says, oh, you can't use Google Wallet's NFC app, you'd still be able to get the non-NFC version that'll let you at very least control the physical card, control your, the new mobile wallet stuff, and pick which card is linked in as the primary card, and check all your balances, do all the management and stuff like that, and get around the carrier blocks.
Mm-hmm. For those of you watching that are wondering where Derek is, Derek is in Mountain View, and he is at Google for a Google TV ambassador meeting. So he's having fun there, and just want to give you guys an update of where he is. Okay, let's move on to Verizon. Verizon is completely closing their VCast app store. Thank goodness.
Yep.
One less thing is about 19 other bloatware apps to go, and then we're in the clear. So
yeah,
small steps.
It's gonna take a while.
Yeah, especially like VZ Navigator. Come on. But
yeah.
But I mean, with a monthly subscription of like $8 to $16, they're probably definitely making bank on it. So.
Oh yeah.
I wonder how much it costs them though.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
I wonder whose API that they tap into to get this navigation data.
Probably Google Maps.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, small steps for Verizon. Any progress from them, I think, is good for consumers. But
we have one less, and we just added the Amazon suite of applications to most Verizon devices. So it's one step forward and about 5 backward now.
Yeah. So some rumors suggest that Google Maps for iOS may get blocked by Apple. Interesting.
It's very likely.
The longer that Google goes with it not being on iOS, the better for Google.
Mm-hmm.
Yes and no. Yeah. I mean, people not using their service is not a good thing, but the sort of built-up anticipation is sort of the same thing Apple was raving about with Verizon before it had the iPhone, right? Like, once we bring the iPhone to Verizon, everybody's going to love it, and everybody's going to rush out and buy it. So once they do finally get it there, it's going to be huge.
But I'm looking at it like if you're on iOS and you don't have something like Google Maps, that is a deterrent for iOS, making people deflect to Android.
Yeah.
So and that's the way I'm looking at it. Yes, they lose the searches initially, but the thing is, they may make up for it when they have a huger market share and ultimately more reliable and trustworthy customers.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem here is just Apple's strange approval process and their very bitter attitude towards Google. I mean, I get that the two are fighting each other all over the place, but when it comes to app approvals, they really, really target Google in a very specific way. I mean, we saw the updated voice search app just came out.
I'm shocked it even made it through like that.
But
it took a long time.
Google had talked about it months in advance, and it was just sitting in Apple's approval queue. Now, there's some rumors that suggest that the recently let go Apple senior vice president, who was head of iOS, was sort of the sticking point on that. And it was the day that he was let go that it finally went into the App Store. So there might be some truth to that, but this isn't new behavior from Apple, right? They did the same thing with Google Voice. Their big thing is, oh, well, it's conflicting with built-in functionality. And it's not even just Google. A recent Google purchase, Sparrow Email, the popular iOS email client, is going to get blocked in iOS version 5 because they bring in some feature, I think it's true type text, that's new to iOS 6, and they basically trick it to work on iOS 5, but that breaks Apple's terms of service. How dare you build an application that does something better than what Apple can do?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just not good for consumers, is really the bottom line, and it's unfortunate.
They've blocked third-party developers and used their ideas on them, turned it around,
on an ongoing basis.
Filed patents for it.
Yeah.
Without acquiring the companies.
without buying,
exactly.
Just file patents for someone else's idea that they blocked from the store. It's sad.
And on the flip side, you got Google that acquires and implements, but
forgets to patent.
That's another argument for another.
Great artists steal, right?
Okay, let's go move on to Dan's favorite section. We got some patent wars information.
Yeah, so some big development in the Motorola cases. So both Apple and Microsoft have been suing Motorola. These cases are a little bit different from the Samsung ones. These aren't actually about infringement. These are specifically about licensing. Basically, both Apple and Microsoft are accusing Motorola of violating their fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory obligations on patent licensing, saying that they're demanding unreasonable licensing fees. Well, they're demanding 2.25%, which shakes out to about $6 a device. For perspective, Apple says that their standards essential patents are worth $30 to $40 per device. So their argument already seems a little weak. But the case against Motorola from Apple specifically got tossed out with prejudice, and for pretty much the same reasons that the last Apple Motorola case got tossed out by Judge Posner. Basically, the judge ruled that, among other things, there's no win here. No matter what the outcome of any kind of licensing trial is, nobody actually gets any kind of remedy, right? Like, if you want to file a lawsuit in America, there has to be a problem, and filing a lawsuit has to be able to lead to some solution. If there's no actual solution, you can't file a lawsuit, is pretty much what the ruling says. There were a lot of other problems with it too, like Apple pretty much saying, well, we're submitting to this case to set a fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory rate, but if we don't like what that rate is, we're just going to ignore it. So the judge was a little bit pissed off that Apple was basically saying, we want you to waste all of your time to give us an advisory opinion. Well, yeah, the court's not really there to give you an advisory opinion. They're there to give you a legally binding opinion. That's what the court does. So, yeah, the judges were pretty pissed at Apple and threw it out pretty strongly. Apple really tried to get back into it by making a lot of compromises, and it even still just didn't get anywhere with it. Meanwhile, on that front, the Motorola case from Microsoft is still proceeding. This one's in Seattle, so Microsoft's home turf, and the judge is, I would say, more than a little bit biased. This judge has ordered the two parties to ignore the findings of other judges from other nations and to not implement those other judges' court orders, because apparently this district court judge in Seattle thinks that they have jurisdiction over the Mannheim court in Germany. I don't really know where they think they get that authority. They definitely don't have it legally, but here we are with, judge in Microsoft's backyard ruling left and right for Microsoft. So this case is not getting thrown out. It is getting shrouded in a lot of secrecy. Google seems to be taking a lot of flack for that in the press, but really it's a lot of joint motions to suppress where both Motorola and Microsoft are signing off together and going to the judge and saying, we want all of these filings redacted. And so it's not, one side trying to hide anything. Both sides are trying to hide everything. Which is pretty standard, especially for a licensing trial, right? Like, this isn't about infringing. This is about how do we determine our how we value our standards essentials patents. And so that's a lot of really really internal negotiations with a vast amount of other unrelated companies. So there really is a lot of confidential and proprietary information there. In other patent news, Apple is going to have to pay $368 million to what amounts to basically a patent troll company called VernetX for infringement of FaceTime protocols. Basically, they have patents over a technology that more or less establishes a VPN in advance of a video connection. They've been running around suing Microsoft. I think they got $100 million from Microsoft, and they're also going after Cisco Systems and a bunch of other big name video conferencing type softwares. So they've been winning everywhere they're filing, so they definitely have strong claims. And during the case, Apple pretty much made the argument that, well, this is such a small feature of the phone that this infringement really shouldn't matter. Yet, meanwhile, rounded corners should be worth $30 to $40 a device.
Oh man.
Hey, rounded corners are extremely innovative, and they're completely different than what's been out there.
Yeah, so Apple's pretty much been losing pretty badly in the patents. They even had to have their senior vice president, Phil Schiller, go back in for more questioning after the first Samsung trial. Basically, the problem is things that he said under oath in the first trial are not quite matching up with things that he said in sworn affidavits for the second Samsung trial. So there are definitely some questions there, and it's highly unusual for a witness to be called back in for a case, especially after the verdict has already come back on that case. So, I mean, they aren't saying it's perjury outright, and they're never going to have enough actual evidence to do that, but there's definitely substantial suspicion over the validity of his testimony at this point.
Now, speaking of losing, have you guys checked out Apple's stock lately?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In the last month, I think it's dropped at least 100 points.
Something like 15.
20% down from its peak.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like $100 billion of value they've lost. That's
and yet brokers and other people are still quoting it as a potential $900 stock, which is
$1,100 stock even.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous.
The most famous one is that Brian White from Topica Capital. Apparently, he's like the most zeroed in on Apple's business, the supply line, and everything. And he says now it's never been a better time to buy.
Yeah, I mean,
that's true.
Cheap right now.
It could be, but I mean, so could Google. I mean, you could look at Google 20 years from now. That could be a $2,000 or $3,000 stock.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I've seen lots of places that are saying Google's worth $1,000, Microsoft's worth $500. It's at $30 right now, so that's a huge difference in value.
Exactly right. The market is a finicky thing, but I mean, everyone has such high expectations towards Apple that even a slight misstep, like Foxconn not being able to produce enough iPhones, so they don't produce an extra 5 million iPhones for the quarter that's coming out.
Right. A slight misstep,
to get beaten up in the market.
Yeah, slight missteps like selling 5 million iPhones in the opening weekend causes your stock to tumble.
And having
breaking sales is a disappointment at Apple.
Yeah, and having iPad mini sales that are not, a little bit lackluster.
Oh, you mean iPad mini sales that are so lackluster that they don't even actually mention them? They just lump them together with the sales of the iPad 4.
Didn't they do that with all of their same type devices? Oh, yeah, they did. Okay, so like all iPhone sales, they lump together pretty much? Yeah, they do. Okay.
No, usually on launch weekends, they'll say we sold this many of the brand new one this weekend.
Well, yeah, but, on earnings calls and stuff, they're not going to say anything. They're saying iPhones. This is how many we sold.
Right. But no, for the opening weekend announcement, it was just iPads lumped together, which is a little unusual for Apple. Okay, that's the way they do it on earnings calls, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move on to some carrier news. We got some big carrier news. Sprint buys $480 million of U.S. cellular. And Dan, did they do this for customers, or did they do it for Spectrum?
Probably a little bit of both. They're picking up a little shy of 600,000. It's 585,000 customers, which, I mean, that's a lot of people, but Sprint has, I think, like 40 million customers, so it's not really a big difference when you're talking about companies that size. Really what they're picking up is 20 megahertz of PCS spectrum across the Midwest. We've got Illinois, Indiana, Chicago area, St. Louis area, so really just the whole middle swath of the country there. And this is where they are currently deploying LTE, and their plan is to use it for LTE. The 20 megahertz block of it means that they're going to be able to build out their LTE substantially more than what they're doing right now.
No.
Right now they're building it on a 5x5 blocks, and so it's, for anybody that has Sprint LTE, it's a lot slower than Verizon or AT&T's. The reason for that is it's on a 5x5 connection instead of 10x10.
Now, these blocks of spectrum, how big is 20 megahertz? I mean, is that a substantial piece of spectrum? Can they do a lot of damage and offer a lot better service with this spectrum?
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to allow them to put 10x10 LTE in these markets.
Okay.
So that's a huge difference versus the 5x5 that they were looking at before. Usually you'll see blocks of sort of 10 at a time going, so they're getting 2 chunks of that. And a block of 10 megahertz across a market is enough to cover that market, at least minimally. So 20 megahertz of spectrum in that band is a big chunk. So they're going to be able to put LTE there, which is definitely good for customers in those regions once they can get it up and running.
Okay, and then T-Mobile turns on iPhone-friendly HSPA Plus on PCS and DE, Baltimore and Houston.
Yep. So this is the 1900 megahertz, the PCS band, which T-Mobile has always had service on. They've just had edge coverage, which is why the iPhone that doesn't have T-Mobile's AWS, where their HSPA Plus has been in the past, that's why the iPhone only gets edge data. It's very slow 2G data on T-Mobile. So they're reframing their 1900 megahertz, their PCS deployment, and moving a lot of the edge up to HSPA Plus. And this is the same HSPA Plus that they already have, so the same 42 megabit, so a lot faster than AT&T's. So people have been checking out the speeds with their iPhones in those areas, and they're getting 2 to 3 times what you can get on AT&T's at that point. So definitely a huge improvement for T-Mobile's 1 million iPhone users. Just 3 markets for starters, but it's going to be a lot easier for them to do this rollout than it is to do the LTE rollouts that a lot of other companies are doing, because
easier, you mean less expensive?
Yeah, the difference between the Edge and GPRS, or not GPRS, GM or UMTS tax are just not that much different from HSP.
No,
it's a very
you're going to HSP
short
Plus,
step.
Very substantial.
Yeah, whereas the jump from that to LTE requires a whole new set of technology laid on top.
Man.
Okay, so moving on to AT&T. I mean, AT&T is trying to join the big boys with their LTE rollout. They're investing $14 billion into network build-out. Now, that's not over just their wireless rollout. That is actually their wireless and their wireline.
Fiber backhaul.
Yep. So they're doing a lot of fiber rollout for businesses, and wireless, they're doing a lot of the LTE investment that they should have been doing before, but they have the HSPA Plus to fall back on, which is good. It's a better fallback than CDMA or 3G. Yeah, it's better than what is.
Yeah, it's definitely better than CDMA.
Yeah. So it's a huge investment that I think and they're planning to have LTE for $300 million by 2014. And I think that they'll hit that towards the end of 2014.
Yeah.
But they're like a year behind when it comes to LTE rollout. I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's 77 or 80 markets right now, and Verizon's at something like 400.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Verizon, I think, covers right around 250 million people right now. AT&T is not going to be to that point until like the end of 2013. So
is AT&T's revision 8 or is it revision 9?
I think it's 9, and T-Mobile's is actually going to be 10.
So that does kind of give AT&T a little bit of an advantage over Verizon for not having to go back and upgrade as much.
You would think that, but really the only difference in revision 9 versus 8 is the addition of support for the bands that AT&T is using. Otherwise, it's the same tech.
Yeah, the 10 is going to be
has some
nice.
new features to it, yeah.
Okay, and also AT&T is offering like $100 off for tablets on contract, so they're trying as much as they can to get people on their network, and it's more apparent even more than before. And also AT&T was fined $700,000 for overcharging customers, and that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, individual customers are going to get $20 or $30 off on a future bill. It has to do with some like weird snafu that they had where they were randomly moving people from one plan to another without telling them. Right? This is $700,000 is really very much a slap on the wrist for a company like AT&T.
Yeah, it's nothing.
That's not a lot of money. But they're also, this was a relatively small case. It was a relatively small group of people that were affected by some clerical problem that they had.
And then we have Verizon to complete their LTE rollout by mid-2013. And their coverage will be 300 million people, currently around 250, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, more rural areas will get it, and I mean, all the main places have it now. Derek doesn't have it, thank goodness. And he'll tell you about it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he will. But this is big. Mid-2013.
That's ahead of projection.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
They've thrown a lot of money down.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they're about 6 months ahead of schedule. And when they say complete, they mean basically their LTE footprint will match their CDMA footprint. So once that happens is really when we'll start to see the real transition to LTE. So right now, everything realistically still works on CDMA and GSM, and then LTE is kind of a bolt-on extra.
Yeah.
And there's some inherent problems with that. Once we progress to the point where things are on LTE, and then CDMA or GSM is the bolt-on fallback, as opposed to the other way around, we'll see devices sort of start to develop in a lot more interesting ways. Metro PCS is probably going to be the first carrier that actually goes that way. They're planning to shut down their CDMA network by the end of 2013, regardless of the T-Mobile buyout. Whereas as Verizon saying that they're going to complete their LTE network doesn't mean that they're going to touch their CDMA. They won't even think about starting to roll that down for probably 3 to 5 years after that, because they have to make sure that they get every single person on their network off of a CDMA-only device and onto an LTE device. Then once they get everybody using, dual mode LTE CDMAs, then they can start dialing that back, and they have to wait until they get everybody onto LTE-only devices before they ever start shutting it off, though. So that's
the best case scenario is just to hope you're able to get voice over LTE across the country, and just bleed off all the legacy devices altogether and hope people upgrade. So
And Dan, I know we've talked about this in previous episodes, but let's say they get their full rollout by mid-2013, and they want to take their LTE to the next level. How easy is it for them to upgrade their existing towers? Is it very, is it cost effective? Is it cheap? Is it hardware? Is it software?
I don't know enough about Verizon's network architecture to give you a really detailed answer on that. It can be set up in a way that it's relatively easy, where you just make some software changes and maybe potentially a couple of minimal hardware changes and then flip a switch. It can be a lot harder, where you have to fully replace everything, which tends to mean that you don't actually replace it. You bring up the new thing alongside. You have to transfer everything very slowly from one to the other, do a lot of testing on it, and Verizon loves to do lots and lots and lots of testing.
Love testing, yes.
And then once you've done all of that, you finally start to decommission the old one. So, for example, the move from LTE to LTE Advanced could be a lot more problematic for some carriers. Okay,
so the move to LTE Advanced might be problematic. How about the move to voice over LTE? Will that be just a simple switch?
That has to do with the spec. Jonathan had mentioned this earlier, LTE spec 9 versus 10 versus the different specifications of it. LTE is very much still a developing technology. It's not as firmly standardized as GSM. There's something like 17 different revisions of LTE. And voice over LTE doesn't come into it until some of the later ones. So for Verizon, for example, they don't have voice over LTE at all yet. Implementing it in theory should be relatively simple and should be mostly software side. But we've seen Verizon struggle with a lot of their network implementations, and they're still having a lot of problems with the LTE to CDMA handoffs. So getting voice over LTE to hand off to CDMA was only done for the first time in demonstration just at last year's CES by Qualcomm. It still isn't really widely used. Metro PCS has voice over LTE, but I don't think they actually do a CDMA handoff with that. If you, right, like if you're on a voice over LTE connection and you drop your LTE, you drop your call.
Okay. Yeah. All right, let's move on to, from carrier news, let's move on to some devices. Jonathan, you got some information for us?
Yeah. First on the table is the HTC Droid DNA, which, if you've been following this particular device, it's been previously rumored to be the DLX, like the Deluxe, or the Droid Incredible X, or the DIX. So whichever one you were hoping it was going to be, the Droid DNA appears to be your final name. There's a November 13th event that is a joint event between HTC and Verizon in New York City that will announce this device.
That's the same day as the Nexus devices, right?
Yeah, same day that the Nexus 10 and the others will be released. And it has gotten FCC approval for Verizon CDMA and LTE, so this device is coming.
Now, is this going to be HTC's? I mean, let's face the facts. HTC has been torn apart as a company. They are losing money, a lot of money. Is this going to be a device that people are going to swap up? I mean,
on paper,
could very well be.
It's got it. It's got it on paper. Let's hope they market it well, but they're beating Samsung and others to a 1080p screen, to a quad-core processor on a newer architecture than what's there. They're beating them to a lot of different hardware specifications, and the battery life is a little bit of a question mark, but it's got it where it counts. The display on the One X is beautiful, and this is going to be a step up from that. I mean, I don't know, it's like a 440 pixel, PPI pixel density. You're not going to be able to see that, but this should be some improvements. I mean, it's well beyond what you're going to see with the naked eye. So
yeah, it is the best panel on the market right now for a mobile device.
A lot of stuff that's not talked about with regards to those panels. Toshiba and Japan Display Inc. They both demonstrated 1080p displays of this caliber. So apparently, though, there's going to be 2 revisions of the panel that's used. So one is itself is going to come from Toshiba, which is the one that's going to be on the devices headed towards the States, and the other panel is going to be destined for international markets. So there will be a little bit of difference, probably with regards to brightness, but either way, I mean, they hit it out of the park.
I think at this point, with these type of display, the pixel density on them, the biggest question mark now is just the color balance. It's getting that right, because you're not going to get individual pixels on a 5-inch screen, or even a larger screen. You get a 1080p resolution, you're not going to see the pixels. You're going to see the color balance and the accuracy of that. And maybe
not to mention the data, just for video required to actually fully take advantage of that. It's just
completely take advantage.
Like an hour.
The arguments are going to come down to color balance and visibility and daylight and viewing angles and things of that nature at this point than it is seeing individual pixels anymore.
Yeah, Apple likes to use their Retina branding for marketing purposes, and the sort of the definition of that is supposed to be more pixels than what you can see with the naked eye. Realistically, they're 326 in the iPhone. In the iPhones,
anything above 260
does not. I mean, for most practical people, yes, it is more than what you can distinguish. For somebody with perfect 20/20 vision, you can distinguish pixels at that density. It has to be over about 350 to actually get that far. And we're talking about something that's into the 400 range. So this is well beyond what the human eye is capable of distinguishing.
So, I really think the real question is this device, along with Verizon's massive marketing push that they're setting up, is it going to be enough to reverse HTC's fortunes? I mean everyone's kind of rooting for HTC. We know we want the company to succeed. They produce great quality hardware.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be. They built their brand on the back of the Droid Incredible and the HTC Evo.
And the Motorola Droid, right? Let's not forget the original Droid.
They knocked it out of the park with those 2 devices and built up. And then the Desire series international. I mean, they've got to recapture that if they want to get back on their feet.
Verizon, they really kind of shot themselves in the foot with the Thunderbolt and the Resound, and they were bound to. The Thunderbolt gets a lot of hate, but realistically, the Thunderbolt wasn't. The Droid Charge was a disaster too.
Way worse.
It was much worse than the Thunderbolt. Now the Thunderbolt's usable. The Charge has just had so many hardware issues, and
they had a long streak of just horrible devices.
The Bionic was probably the only that was Motorola's first shot as at an LTE. That was probably the only one that didn't have major. It still had signal issues, but HTC got better with the Resound as far as implementation. And now you're on second gen LTE hardware. These arguments are out the window. Compared to what the Thunderbolt and their.
Yeah, the problem there was the tech, and like you said, I mean, Verizon just had this string of crappy devices because the tech just wasn't there to back them up. And I mean, all across
the incredible
Motorola,
4G
Samsung,
LTE was
LG,
just
HTC, all of them were just crap devices.
They were pretty bad, really bad. Even the incredible 4G LTE is, Verizon's cheapened down variant of what should have been a 1S. It really just should have been a 1S, and these things aren't really helping HTC's reputation. But
no, not at all.
HTC really just gets burned basically because they're on pretty much every major U.S. carrier. They're the first one to introduce a new network technology, and they've just gotten burned for it. They had the what they have on AT&T
Evo with WiMAX, the first LTE device on Verizon.
AT&T's what was it, the Inspire?
AT&T, the first HSPA plus 42 device on T-Mobile. I mean,
they work with carriers closely, but sometimes it just comes back to get you.
I think the fact that they innovate like that and are first to the game, I think that's why people are rooting it for them. And the fact of the matter is, we want more competition. So I hope that they pull out of it.
Hopefully, you don't want to see a 2-horse race between Samsung and Apple.
I mean, we already are. It's
getting so close. You want to see somebody pull out.
It's already been taken up by 2 players in the market.
I just don't want to see it go like that.
If we look at the role of with the S3 this time, it represented like the first time that an international company like Samsung was able to have a pretty concerted rollout on a global basis, and it was only a month, after the actual events in London that they had the S3, that it went on sale internationally, and then a month later it was on sale in the States. About a month, depending on the carrier. That's impressive.
It's helps your marketing substantially because you can pop on like Samsung did with the Olympic Games and Galaxy S3, whatever carrier you're on, go get yourself
on a global basis, right?
Yep. Yeah, you don't need to have 45 different ads.
DNA stuff.
Okay.
Anyway.
So speaking of Mexico, speaking of
the Motorola Razr HD is going to be Mexico's first LTE smartphone via Telcel, so not a bad device to start yourself off with. It's the Razr HD. I've played around with one in Verizon. It's a solid phone. It's a really solid phone, well built, has a good feel in the hand.
And then definitely good for customers south of the border finally getting LTE.
Yeah. Definitely good time to start out. It's a good time for them to get into LTE so long as the carrier holds up their end of it. So.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely, especially as a lot of newer places are rolling out LTE, and Europe is still kind of coming to the bandwagon. A lot of Asia is still just now getting on board.
18 months from now.
Yeah, there are a lot of advantages to that because it's more established now, and so they kind of know how to do it right. Learn from all of Verizon's failures.
Yeah, Verizon.
I've heard from some people that work with Motorola out of Asia that they typically don't really prioritize devices outside of the United States. We've always known that Motorola has been very much a North American focused company, but Google is making a big push, to expand their reach on an international basis. So I think we'll see a lot more device launches out internationally from Motorola soon.
There is land outside of the United States. Some people don't realize it, but
where a lot more people live.
Google is definitely starting to look a lot harder at focusing on the international community in terms of device purchasers and more or less thumbing their noses at Verizon and AT&T and Sprint as device purchasers.
It's so much easier to hit an international push too, to hit so many more users because of the network technology. It's
just they get the device updates
so much more standardized.
No, and they're targeting their consumers to be consumers, not companies that then turn around and resell to consumers.
Okay, so speaking of Germany,
the German Galaxy Note 10.1 is going to be getting Jelly Bean 4.1. Is that rolling out now, or is that rolling out?
It's rolling out now. So Jelly Bean is
to be had on the.
More Jelly Bean goodness. It's definitely nice to see that market share go up of that version.
Bump it up. We'll get another 0.5 percentage point or so out of that one.
It's a big improvement over ICS.
It really is. You don't realize it until you use device on a daily basis, and it just kind of hits you just how much.
Yeah, and in addition to the Note's S Pen, I think it also has the Samsung picture-in-picture mode. So, I think especially on a tablet, I think that gets a lot more use than on a.
Have they modified the multi-window mode? If they fix the multi-window mode issues, that's worth the upgrade in itself. Because the first
have you guys ever used
was terrible.
The overscreen browser before? Have you ever used that?
Yeah,
you'll find that they haven't updated it to Jelly Bean. And if you look at Samsung's sort of pop-up play, which they have, on all their devices, the recent ones at least, Jelly Bean doesn't work with overscreen, but their pop-up browser is limited in functionality. You can't resize it. You can't do a lot of things with it. So Samsung basically just forwarded the idea, made it less functional, and the developers haven't updated it yet. So.
Just give a little taste.
Yeah.
More to come.
Yeah, exactly.
More to come.
The multi-window is inherently limited. I mean, you can only use in a small set of circumstances.
Small set of apps.
Most users
HTC One SV, another One S variant, is coming out for Australia, Singapore, and maybe Europe. The device itself is very similar to the One S and kind of like almost closer between a 1S and an incredible 4G.
Yeah, it doesn't have that image sense super camera processing stuff that the 1S and the X have,
which is pretty. I've seen a lot of the HTC shots, and they have improved on their cameras a lot.
Yeah, it still has the same camera sensor, so the actual the quality of the images is the same. It just can't do the fancy processing that the others can do with them. And it's also got the same downclocked 1.2 gigahertz dual-core crate that the Ink 4G had, as opposed to the 1.5 that's in the others. So definitely a mid-range device. I think it's 4.3 inches in QHD, so definitely not anything to write home about these days. But
it's good that technology has come to the point that we're saying this now. Though.
Yeah, definitely.
We're shunning a device with a pretty solid processor and a QHD screen and just labeling it as just run-of-the-mill, then I'd say we're in a much better place than we were 2 years ago. So
okay, and then
even 1 year ago.
Even a year. And the 1S is going to be available in ceramic black for free on T-Mobile USA.
Yes, that's the fancy international arc welded ceramic where they flash welded it some ridiculous way, basically strike it with lightning to ceramicize this metal. So a lot of people
makes you wonder if they go to that trouble if they couldn't just powder coat the metal.
Yeah, it doesn't sound as cool.
No,
it doesn't sound as nice, but you can
look as cool.
You can hit powder coating with a hammer and not even chip it, but I guess it's too much of a stretch.
Let's not get bogged down in the details.
And this brings me on to the fact that colors and being carrier exclusive is pissing me off. The fact that some carriers have maroon colors, some carriers have black, some
garnet red.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. Get a case, make it whatever color you want. Make it a thin case, because cases are annoying.
Yes.
But if you want to change the color, get a case.
Yeah. So the last little bit for devices, Motorola has added the Electrify M to their device unlock program. So if you're on US Cellular, then you can get an unlockable Motorola device now.
Yeah, I think that's basically a clone of the Razr M, just for US Cellular.
Very slightly. It's honestly shocking because most of the smaller carriers like that don't even get phones that are that good. So
yeah,
a lot of the smaller carriers are still getting new phones with gingerbread and 2-year-old hardware. So
yeah.
It's kind of
that's where they make their money.
They make a ton on it.
Yeah. So Darcy, you're gonna tell us a little bit more about this Nexus 4 giveaway, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So obviously, thanks for checking out the Hangout, guys. For visiting Android Authority. This is all we do. We live to serve you guys. We're trying to make the site as good as possible. Make YouTube, our production, our device reviews, the Versus, and really cover everything about the Android ecosystem because we're really passionate about it. So with that in mind, we always love to give back, and we're going to be giving away Nexus 4 to our international audience. And so, obviously, for those of you guys who are tuned in right now, you've probably been waiting for the secret code. Anyway, so the code for the to get those extra points for this time around is going to be AA loves Nexus 4. And so that's AALOVESNEX US 4. So just remember to punch that in on the Rafflecopter little widget there in the article, and you will get those points. No gaming, so no.
Does capitalization matter on that?
It doesn't matter, no.
Okay. So where does somebody go to join?
So basically, you'll just see at the top of the site, just go to androidauthority.com, and there will be a Nexus 4 International giveaway just there at the top. We've made the post sticky, so no matter what day or time you go, you'll see it there. You just scroll down about 2/3 down the page, and you'll see the Rafflecopter widget. And from there, you can just enter the secret code, and yeah, just like the code that I gave you. And from there, on our end, we'll see that you've entered the code correctly, and you'll get those extra points, which will increase your chances to win that particular device.
Nice. So do you have to do anything else, like share it on social media or follow you on Twitter or something?
I mean, there's a lot of different chances to win. If you really, really wanted to do it the best way, you'll circle us, you'll subscribe to our YouTube, check out liking Facebook, unfortunately, for those of you guys that don't like it. Sorry about that. You can comment, you can plus the article itself, you can like the article, and then you can enter that code. And if you listen for next week's Hangout, we'll have a different code for that. And so that will just give you the best chances of winning, which are still really good right now. Only about 2,500 people have entered the contest. So you still have, actually, compared to lotteries and stuff like that, you have
those are amazing odds.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you can get multiple shots at that.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
We also, I should mention now for our Indian-specific listeners, we do also have an Indian version of Android Authority, which is just in.androidauthority.com, where we cover Android news, Android device releases, and all that other stuff related specifically to the Indian market, where we actually have another Nexus 4 giveaway there too. We don't want you guys to feel neglected, so we have a separate giveaway for you guys there too, so check out that site.
Awesome. Well.
Excellent.
Sweet. So again, the code is AA loves Nexus 4.
That's right. That is the code.
Awesome.
AA loves Nexus 4, yeah.
All right, so let's move on to Rootin' and Ramen, and then let's wrap up here. So CyanogenMod, they built in a root-capable file explorer.
Yeah, that's definitely huge for people that, especially for people that are doing testing. I know personally one of the biggest annoyances I have is I won't flash gaps on something. I'm just putting it up to test, and then I can't get access to the file system because I have to go and download a file browser. I know CyanogenMod used to package a file explorer that was kind of mediocre. This one definitely looks a lot nicer, plus it has built-in root capability that's all integrated with the rest of their development options, so you don't need to get Root Explorer or Solid Explorer Beta or any of the other root-capable file explorers. It's just built into the ROM right there for you, which realistically is how it should be. I mean,
it's nice. It's nice, but the fact of the matter is that Solid Explorer Beta 2, it has a root file explorer. That's fine. That's great, but it also has dual windows that you can initiate your cloud services and literally copy and paste your files from your cloud into your device. It is the easiest way to view files and copy stuff, and it's great.
I agree.
I think Cyanogen kind of has an obligation to, people still don't really separate the difference between AOSP and Google proprietary applications, and they have somewhat of an obligation to have a phone that could stand by itself usage-wise without having the Play Store tied to it. So you have applications like that. It's pretty useful to have something that's usable, that you don't have to, you don't want to flash the software on there and just desperately have to track down APKs online or something to be able to get something that's fully functional. So I think their biggest, kind of like the Apollo Music versus having Google Play Music, they accomplish the same functions, but one of them is open source and you don't have to tie into Google services to use it. So
and then the Jelly Bean 4.2 core app updater, Dan.
So some different organizations, or I guess individuals in the modding community, put together basically a flashable zip with all of the core Jelly Bean 4.2 applications. So it lets you flash the new swipeable keyboard together with the new pinch to zoom enabled email, the new camera and gallery that's all built into it. And I think there's a couple of other tweaked applications in there as well. Bundle them all up and flash them together. I've heard there's some issues with it. It's apparently still using an older version of the new Gmail that doesn't update some of the icons and still has some problems and isn't actually associated with the Play Store.
Yeah, because I'm running the Photosphere and the new keyboard. Keyboard has been great and had no problems with it, but Photosphere, I get gallery crashes probably a couple times a day.
Yeah, I've heard that the packaged app, the Flashable for it, is using some older versions of the keyboard and some older versions of the camera and the gallery. So it might not be, the latest and greatest fixed up ones, but obviously this is all still a moving target as 4.2 is not even really out yet.
When is Google going to release it?
Well, I don't know if the devices go on sale or just go up for pre-order on the 13th. I guess we'll find out in 5 days. But my guess would be that the code will go up on or before the devices go on sale.
Yeah, probably almost simultaneous.
Yeah,
hopefully before. And
at the latest, usually the latest they've been is probably 2 days later or so. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, I think the
nothing
latest
major.
come out is like 2 days after they were in customers' hands.
Yeah. Okay, well, so for those of you guys watching, you guys can watch us on YouTube. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can subscribe and listen to us on SoundCloud if you don't want to deal with the video bandwidth, or if you just don't like looking at us. I understand. Dan, sometimes I just cannot look at him. But SoundCloud. Also, we have an RSS feed. We're available on Podbean. We're available on iTunes. Also, Stitcher Radio. And if you want to find all the posts, we do a post after every show. The day after, we have all of the streaming content up the night of. And the next day, we have the article. If you go to AndroidAuthority.com and scroll down to the bottom right, there is a section on the bottom called On Air, and you can get all that goodiness stuff and figure out how to subscribe on there. Well, guys, thank you for joining us tonight, and hopefully you guys enter that code, the AA loves Nexus 4, right?
That's right, brother.
All right, well, you guys have a great night.
All right, thanks a lot.
Take it easy, guys.